We're seeing everyone from Hollywood to Sesame Street wanting us to get into the swing of things. Now, I apologise to my audience for having to show some of that, but Kirralie, there's no words for that, are there?
It's mind-boggling. It's so repulsive and perverse, and there's no way that heterosexual couples would get away with that in public, nor would they want to. But for these people to do it under the banner of pride is, there are no words. It is repulsive.
Yeah, and of course that was from a supposedly family-friendly Pride parade in Pride Month in West Hollywood. Now, Kirralie, did you, like me, notice the bestiality theme running through that parade? This is what we've invited in when we degendered marriage back in 2017, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and Corey Bernardi was absolutely slammed for his slippery slope comment, and yet here we are, a family-friendly parade down the main street in broad daylight, and these men are practicing their fantasies, playing them out on the main street for everyone to see, and now it's all over social media as well.
Yeah, that's right, and look, apart from the lurid image we saw there, it's the people walking along with animal masks on, I've talked about this before on the show, the idea of mixing animals and human sexuality. I mean, this is unthinkable stuff that's now being put forward as normal. And this is what Pride Month, what the rainbow flag is telling us we've all got to celebrate and put in front of our children. Now, speaking of children, another Pride Month contribution came from Sesame Street. Kirralie, I don't know about you, but I grew up watching Sesame Street and Big Bird and Mr. Snuffleupagus and Oscar the Grouch. But as James McPherson pointed out on Sky News this week, why does Sesame Street want to celebrate divergent sexual orientations with your children?
Hi, Elmo and I wanted to share that everyone is always welcome on Sesame Street. This month and every month, we want to uplift and celebrate our LGBTQIA plus family, friends, and communities.
Yeah, that's right, Miss Ariana. From our Sesame Street family to yours, happy Pride! Elmo loves you.
And I love you, Elmo.
Now, Kirralie, this is quite insidious. Of course, we all want everyone to feel welcome. That's never been in question. But to use Sesame Street to induct, 3 to 5 year olds into that which ends up in the streets of West Hollywood, do parents know what they're getting themselves into?
Look, it is utterly ridiculous. They're hiding in plain sight, or not even trying to hide it anymore. They're saying the quiet bits out loud. I mean, let's look at it, Lyle. They're saying sexual orientations and sexual identities now need to be foisted onto 3 to 5 year olds. The word sexual is in capital letters, is highlighted, is the whole point of Pride. And now we're ramming it down children's throats. Children do not ever need to be sexualised. It is appalling that there is very little outrage about this, and that parents are swallowing this claptrap rubbish nonsense, all in the name of tolerance and diversity. They need to wake up and understand that their children deserve protection and they should not ever be sexualised.
Yeah, absolutely. And shame on Sesame Street. As parents and grandparents, we've just got to keep our kids away from this stuff now. It's just not safe. Who would have ever thought we'd get here? But Kirralie, this next clip, which has also come out during Pride Month, is a little bit hard to watch. And I agonised over whether we should show it, but I think we should. And all this starts with Sesame Street celebrating Pride Week or Pride Month with 3-year-olds, and this is where it ends up.
Years ago, I got gender reaffirming surgery. Here's a honest update. Do I regret it? Short answer is yes. Don't get me wrong, I got it done twice. It looks Barbie. Why do I regret it? Well, because I will never be able to live a normal life. After the surgery, you have to start dilating to keep the space they gave you. You start from doing it 4 times a day to once a week for the rest of your life. I was fine with that. See, the problem is I had major complications, and now for some reason I need to do it every single day. Now, obviously, I've had relations, and girls, we all know guys don't fucking know what to do. So it's not really worth it to me. The problem is I cannot stop. If I stop, it's going to close up and create a bubble, and that bubble could literally create an infection that could... The two options here are I dilate for the rest of my life, or I get it removed surgically. Surgery goes for $70,000, and I don't want to go through that again, so I guess I'm dilating.
Now, Kirralie, for those who might be a bit confused, and I don't blame anyone for being confused, what we saw there was a young man who has tried to become a woman, and he's talking about what's been done to his body surgically. You can only describe it as mutilation. But you and I have both got sons, and it goes without saying, we would always love our sons, but no parent would wish this upon their child.
It's horrific. That man has been sold an extraordinary lie that if he has some surgery, that he will, have his problems solved, that he'll become a woman, that he will, these things, he could live a normal life. And it's a lie. It is so unkind to these young men and women who are chopping off body bits, who are having reconstructions, who are on drugs, now lifetime medical industry patients, customers basically, and they will never achieve the goal of changing their sex because it is impossible to do. And not only will they not achieve that goal, they put themselves at great risk of the sort of infections and complications that guy was just talking about. And, we saw it in the What is a Woman documentary as well with Scott Nugent. That's a female who had reconstructive surgery, horrific things done to her arm to construct a penis, and she's had infection after infection after infection, and many, many complications. We're hearing more and more about it. This is what people need to hear and see and understand, that they're being sold a lie, that their issues will not be resolved. In fact, they'll probably become even more complicated and life-changing and life-threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, your heart just breaks for that young man. He is forever scarred. He's been castrated. He can never get his male genitalia back. He will never have sexual function, and he's got to deal with the complications of what he describes as a hole that's been created that he's got to dilate, and he's looking at another $70,000 to try and have some sort of corrective surgery. It's just unbelievable, Kirralie. And so, this is in the context of last night's AFL Pride game between Sydney Swans and St Kilda. This is when they fly the rainbow flag at the SCG as they did last night and hold a Pride game, this is what they're celebrating, those victims. You rightly reported this week on the Binary blog some research which yet again shows that gender transition, like the young man in that video, is not helping people get free of their anxiety. The social science is showing this, isn't it?
Correct. That's right. Mental health issues are not going down once people are medicalised. So whether they've become drug dependent for life or having these surgeries, their mental health issues are not being addressed. So they're still suffering from things like depression, anxiety and other things requiring further medicalisation. And after surgery, studies have shown that suicide risks actually do increase in these people. And so, again, we just get this painted, lovely rainbow picture that everything will be fine if you go down this pathway, but it's actually not the truth. And then to complicate things even more, when academics attempt to study these things and to really do the rigorous, heavily invested studies, the money is withdrawn, they're ostracised by the universities and all the rest of it. And children are the ones who are suffering the most in all of this. So, we need these inquiries and we need thorough research done, because all the research so far is showing it doesn't resolve the problems that people that cause the gender dysphoria in the first place.
Yeah, it's so ironic, Kirralie. I mean, we're told we have to affirm young people in their gender confusion because they might commit suicide. Schools have got to put this in the curriculum, et cetera, yet as the research is showing, it's not helping. I hope people are getting a bit of a sense of what Pride Week and what the rainbow flag is all about. It's so important. Sorry, Pride Month, I should say, which if only it was a week, it's a whole month of June globally. But Kirralie, another article that caught my attention, and I know you've spoken about this in the past, but this was in the Wall Street Journal. It's entitled "The Truth About Puberty Blockers." It's by Gerald Posner. Now, I think this was also discussed in the Australian Senate last week. I believe it was Senator Malcolm Roberts from One Nation asking the Chief Health Officer and the Therapeutic Goods Administration. But Posner makes the same point in his article that the puberty blockers that are given to very young children, that's before that young man that we saw has surgery, right? This is really early on in the piece, as young as 10 years old. It's a synthetic chemical and it's given to children off-label. It's not even approved for the use of treating gender dysphoria by the Therapeutic Goods Administration in Australia or the Food and Drug Administration in the US. This is a big experiment on children.
It is totally an experiment on children. Those drugs have only been tested and used for precocious puberty. So children who are entering into puberty too young, that they want to pause that puberty so that their peers can catch up. And it does cause complications. We already know that. As you said, it is a chemical castration drug. Dr. Marcy Bowers, who is a male to female transgender surgeon, has said on the record that boys who go on these puberty blockers will never experience orgasm. So their sexual function is completely removed. And there's also great concerns about sterility, brain and bone development issues with these puberty blockers, the part of the brain that's targeted. So all of this is happening on children throughout Australia, and the Royal Children's Hospital on their own website says puberty blockers are reversible. It's simply not true, and it simply hasn't been studied enough, and these drugs are being used off-label.
Off-label, I mean, they are drugs that are available for treating things like prostate cancer, but not for treating children who are confused about their gender. The other thing in Posner's Wall Street Journal article that really hit me was he mentioned that puberty blockers, these synthetic drugs, are used for the chemical castration of repeat sex offenders in America. And yet here we are in Australia prescribing them to kids. Have we gone mad?
Yep. Totally. That's the only way to describe it, Lyle, because it's cruel, it's nasty, it's damaging these children permanently for life. These children cannot consent to puberty blockers. They cannot consent to all of the side effects, and any parent that allows their children or consents on behalf of their child is ignorant and is doing an untold damage to these children, and they really deserve medical practitioners to tell them the truth about these things. I feel for these parents because they're being sold a lie, but they really need to ask more thorough questions to get the results and to understand the exact complications that these children are going to face. I think there's going to be an enormous amount of litigation in future years, Lyle, directly because of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you and I have talked about this before, but I wish that people could sue the politicians who are allowing this to legally happen and who are allowing gender fluid ideology to be taught to children in schools. It's just absolutely outrageous. Kirralie, there was some good news this week, though, in spite of all the bad news. Now, tell us about what happened with Terry White chemist. I think this will cheer people up.
Yeah, well, Rachel Wong of the Women's Forum noted that Terry White had used the word birthing person in their promotional materials, and she challenged that and said, no, we're women, we're not birthing people. And others like The Real Rushkin took it on and went viral on social media. And to Terry White's credit, they made the correction. They took out the words birthing person and reinserted the word woman, because that's who we are. We are women. We're not birthing people or chest feeders or any of that other nonsense. We are women. And only women can get pregnant and only women can give birth.
Well, that's a great way to wrap up our discussion on Pride Month, Kirralie, and it just shows the power of people if we will get active, and so none of us should ever lose hope in this fight.